Okay, I want to talk about a subject that is really, really important, but every time I bring it up, my videos either get the sound turned off, they get demonetized, or they get taken down altogether. So please, please, please like, comment, share, make sure that this gets picked up in the algorithm and hopefully stays up on TikTok. If it gets taken down off here, I will absolutely have it up on my YouTube, Parker's Permaculture. In my last video, I talked about how previously folks weren't quite ready to entertain the idea of a general strike. But now we're at a point where there are increasing calls for one, and people understand what the path to victory looks like, and that part of what we have to go through to get there is going to be a general strike. So I'd like to draw your attention to wagingnonviolence.org and an article that came out on April 8th by Jeremy Brecher. The article is entitled, "What Would a General Strike in the U.S. Actually Look Like?" Calls for a general strike in the U.S. are growing. It's important to understand how to organize one, given their key role in overcoming tyrants around the world. Now, one of the key players at Waging Nonviolence is Dr. Erica Chenoweth, and their work on nonviolent resistance and how to make it successful in toppling authoritarianism is really, really key. I encourage you to go follow them on BlueSky and to really spend some time on Waging Nonviolence website. So I'm going to read some parts of this article, but I encourage you to go read the whole thing. Something is in the air, a perception that American democracy and livable conditions for working people may only be saved by the kind of large-scale, nonviolent direct action, variously called general strikes, political strikes, or, as I will refer to all of them, social strikes. Calls for mass disruptive action are coming from unlikely places like Anthony Romero, executive director of the ACLU, an org normally associated with legal action through the courts. Pull the curtain back and get a little more sunshine in here. Okay. When Romero was asked in a recent interview what would happen if the Trump administration systematically defied court orders, he replied, "Then we've got to take to the streets in a different way. We've got to shut down this country." And we are watching the Trump regime openly defy judges' rulings about the rendition of men to El Salvador. Similarly, senior Democratic Rep Jim McGovern said, and I covered when he talked about this at a town hall, he said, "We can't just sit back and let our democracy just fall apart. What we need to think about are things like maybe a national strike across this country." Some in organized labor are also entering the fray. Sarah Nelson, head of the Association of Flight Attendants, recently said that American workers, no matter what they do or what sector they are in, now have very few options but to join together to organize for a general strike. Meanwhile, online there are even more ad hoc efforts demonstrating the tactic's appeal right now. For instance, more than 300,000 people have signed cards pledging to participate in a general strike. That is generalstrikeus.com. Calling for general strikes is a staple of the radical toolkit, but why has the idea of such mass actions suddenly appeared on the lips of such a wide range of people? There are three principal reasons. Number one, the wide range of people being harmed by the MAGA juggernaut gives credibility to actions based on wide public participation. Two, demolition of key institutions of democracy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law is threatening to leave few alternatives to popular uprising. Three, the fecklessness of the leadership of the Democratic Party, as sublimely illustrated by Senator Chuck Schumer's passage in March of the devastating MAGA budget, has led to despair about resistance within the institutions of government themselves. These inescapable realities are forcing people to think in unaccustomed ways. I use the term social strikes to describe mass actions people take to exercise power by withdrawing cooperation from and disrupting the operation of society. The goal of a social strike is to affect not just the immediate employer, but a political regime or social structure. Such forms of mass direct action provide a possible alternative when institutional means of action prove ineffective, meaning the courts and the Congress are not going to get the job done. Those institutions are failing us. So mass direct action is the tool we need to employ. In all of their varied forms, they are based on Gandhi's fundamental principle that even the most powerful cannot rule without the cooperation of the ruled. As Cory Booker says, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. You cannot govern without the consent of the governed. A general strike is us withdrawing our consent. Social strike is a broad term that encompasses a wide range of activities that use the withdrawal of cooperation and mass disruption to affect governments and social structures. While the U.S. does have a tradition of social and labor movements using mass action and general strikes, it does not have a tradition of using people power for the defense of democracy. However, in other countries where democratic institutions have been so weakened or eliminated that they provide no alternative to tyranny, such methods have been used effectively. Tyrannical regimes from Serbia to the Philippines to Brazil and many other places have been brought down by nonviolent revolts that made society ungovernable. In March of this year alone, there were general strikes in Belgium, Argentina, Serbia, and Korea, all directed against government austerity policies, or in the case of Korea, unconstitutional seizure of government power. Various kinds of social strikes have occurred here in the US throughout our history. These strikes in our history often went far beyond the withdrawal of labor that conventionally defines a strike. Mass strikes have included general strikes, mass picketing, occupation of workplaces and government buildings, nonviolent direct action, shutdowns of commerce, blocking traffic, and other disruption of everyday activities. Mass strikes in the U.S. have often been met with severe repression and at times involved violent conflict with company guards, police, state militia, and the U.S. Army. The U.S. has also seen a handful of actions that fit the classical definition of a general strike as a coordinated work stoppage by trade unions across many different sectors. The closest we have really come to a national strike was in 1886, when a strike for the 8-hour workday became a general strike in Chicago and other locations. There was also the Seattle General Strike in 19, and there was one as well in Oakland and another in Stamford, Connecticut in 1946. All of these were around workers' struggles with their employers. Such union-called general strikes have been a real rarity in our labor history. American unions are often bound by laws specifically designed to prevent them from taking part in strikes about issues that happen outside of their workplace, such as sympathy strikes or political strikes. In most cases, their contracts include no strike language that bans them from striking during the contract. Unions that violate these prohibitions are subject to crushing fines, the loss of bargaining rights, etc. And their leaders can and have been packed off to jail. Who benefits? Who benefits from repressing the working class from organizing to strike like that? Okay, jumping down. While strikes for specifically political purposes like deposing political leaders or affecting legislation are very common in other countries, they are a rarity in the U.S. An exception was the 23-day strike by 42,000 West Virginia coal miners in 1969. This forced the state legislature to pass a law providing compensation for victims of black lung disease. In recent decades, the use of the terms strike and general strike has often been broadened beyond workers' withdrawal of their labor power to other forms of direct action, such as student strikes and popular uprisings. There has been some complaint that this broader usage misses the unique power that results from workers' ability to halt production through the withdrawal of their labor power. This is why the author uses the term social strike to include student strikes and other uprisings. The article also draws attention to the 2018 flight attendant strike. Flight attendants withdrew their labor for 35 straight days, forcing Trump to end his government shutdown. After 3 weeks, Trump threatened another government shutdown, so the flight attendants said, okay, we'll have another strike. Their website said, imagine the power of working people standing together to demand that our government work for us. At the last minute, Trump decided not to shut down the government again. Sarah Nelson, the president of the Flight Attendants Union, said, our country doesn't run without federal workers who make it run. So could strikes play a significant role in countering Trump's developing autocracy? A study a century ago noted that strike conditions are conditions of mind. Strikes are unlikely to happen until a large enough proportion of the population is enraged over MAGA tyranny and dubious that more moderate forms of action can fix the issue. And people must be ready to take personal and institutional risks to oppose Trump. The article claims that such conditions do not quite currently exist at present. They said there are multiple straws in the wind that indicate a growing public willingness to act with a strike. I don't have time to list them all here, but you can go read them. We recognize that we're not quite at the point for a big strike yet, so what can we do to lay the groundwork? How do we increase the likelihood of their occurrence and success? Actions like hands off on April 5th and those being planned for May Day can progressively incorporate forms of non-cooperation and disruption that can evolve toward social strikes. Remember I said we're trying to help people level up. Combine your strike with non-workplace actions like boycotts, commercial showdowns, picketings, blockades, civil disobedience. And just because laws prohibit unions from participating in the strikes, that doesn't mean that their members can't on their own. In the wise words of Sarah Nelson, a general strike is a tactic, but the power is in our solidarity. We should look and think of social strikes not as ends in themselves, but as one possible means to build the movement that will be necessary to overcome MAGA tyranny. There is a difference between a protest action, perhaps lasting a day or two, and an open-ended struggle for power. We know that a protracted social strike has been the final means to overcome tyranny many times over. Such actions are unlikely here until there is wider spread anger and mass mobilization, and a willingness of the populace to take serious risks. We need to understand that no matter what tyrants do, the people have the tools to defeat them.